Good evening, everybody, and welcome to round number 13 of 15 rounds in the Assetto Corsa Aussie Down Under Series ATCC Championship. You heard me right, just 3 rounds is all that remains in the championship, including tonight's round at the Heritage listed, one of very few circuits in the world to be Heritage listed, Lakeside Park Raceway in Queensland. One of those circuits where I guess you can say time stood still because the cars that are going around tonight would have visited there in real life, not anymore, but they get a bit of a reprieve here in the virtual sim racing world. A big thank you to those who continue to watch this during the live stream, also this after the stream has gone to air back during the week. My name is Steve DeVries. I've been doing this since day dot, and thankfully only a short number of weeks remain in this year's championship, and as you can see from the season calendar, there they are. So Lakeside tonight, Winton next week, and then Newcastle the week after that, and by that stage we will know who the winner of the ATCC series title is. It is still a pretty close run thing if we have a look at the point standings, which will bring them up for you now. So Shannon Wright had a bit of a blip on the radar last week. It's the only round where he has not featured on the podium in at least one race. He struggled to a 6th place and a 5th place finish overall, and that also goes with the 4th place that he had in the second race at Calder Park. So 3 straight races without a podium appearance. Conversely, Nathan Higginson, 3 straight races with a podium appearance, including 2 wins at the last round in a clean sweep. Pole fastest lap in both races, led every lap in both races, and you pretty much can't get better than that. He dominated that, and he has got that margin down to 92 points, where it was looking like it was going to be staying stationary for 2 consecutive weeks running. The points margin between the 2 drivers was 119 points after Bahrain and after Calder Park, and it took a nosedive last week. And more importantly for Nathan Higginson tonight, with Shannon Wright being away with family commitments, it's a very big opportunity for him to get himself right back in the thick of it before we get to Winton next week. A couple of other drivers that moved up the field last week, Jamie Nankervis and John Wright, both moved a couple of positions north at the expense of Dane Liccardo, who missed a round. Terry Marwood, Brett Willis and Brian Walsh, who had a pretty good run actually with a podium finish in race number 1 last week, finds himself in 8th place, although he's tied with Dylan Call because virtue of that 3rd place finish, he is ahead on the point standings. And Termo has found himself just shuffled down the order to the bottom of the pile in P10, but he is here tonight, and the last time we saw him was all the way back at Bathurst, so he's missed 4 rounds consecutive, has Termo, and the number 51 Red Brick, as you'll see it going around the track, is back in action. We head on over to the track for tonight. And this track, when it opened all the way back at the beginning of 1961, it pretty much has remained unchanged in its layout since the day that it first came into existence. The only exceptions being, back in the day, there was no pit lane. Actually, there was a pit lane. It was on the front straight, but the entrance was after the final corner, not before it. That pit lane that you can see on your graphic there came into existence in 1974. And since then, there's been very few changes. There's been a couple of extra bits of tarmac added on the top side of the circuit, where you have the motorcycle course, and then a few other alterations. The only one real piece of interesting information, actually 2 pieces of interesting information, was that the circuit is, as I said earlier, is one of only a handful of tracks around the world to be awarded heritage status, which means it is saved and unable to be ploughed over by housing developments a la Oran Park in Sydney. And then the other interesting bit of information, when we were alluding to the Australian Touring Car Series, or the ATCC Championship, that visited here between 67 and 1998. It was pretty much uninterrupted except for a period in 1973 to 74 where they didn't come here because they had to raise a 100-metre section of track to be higher than the flood line necessitated by the council. So I believe that's a section of track that's over the back part of the circuit, and that was the only 2 times in the history of Australian Touring Car Championship, but they did not come here to race. 20-minute qualifying session is getting underway at the moment. We're a little bit behind time. There's been a couple of server issues, a few new drivers making their way out. We haven't got any laps just yet, but we'll go there in just a few seconds. 2.41k is the distance, 2 18-lap races, so they'll probably be about 20-minute races each. And the important part of everything tonight is there is no compulsory pit stop. As we pick up the on-track action, just waiting to see who the first runners are to set some laps. Now, there is no compulsory pit stop tonight. That is just a track design issue. Apparently, there's a few dramas with getting those compulsory stops completed. So the crew have opted to take the compulsory pit stops away. 2 drivers to set time so far. Termo wasting no time getting down to business. In the 51, he's gone to the top of the timing pile with a 56.1. It's quite a handy lap time, and we did predict that this was going to be a track that would likely suit the Volvo. And what I'm hearing as well is it probably should suit the BMW in the right hands. Termo really wrestling this car here. Oh, and drifting it right out sideways. And just avoids the fence. So, good save, but a little bit wild just coming into turn 6, and then turn 7 just a little bit too much. A couple of drivers, Termo, Nathan Higginson, Dane Liccardo, Glenn Miles, Brian Walsh, all drove at this particular circuit last year in the ATCC Group A series. I was about to say, it looks like it might have been Brian Munn there, had a bit of a moment across the track. About to say 5 of those guys have driven this circuit in the TCAC series, which was put on by Brock Harvey and co last year. So they are familiar with the layout and the track itself, and times that are being planted down at the moment, not too dissimilar from what happened last time out. Oh, we've actually just had a bit of issue with the track audio. There we go. We finally got some audio. A couple of little dramas there. So here we go. And, well, speaking of dramas, there goes Higginson, exit stage right, and staying stage left on that shot. And I think that's him aborting his lap. We're going to have a look at his teammate in Dane Liccardo, who's doing the same sort of thing Higo did there, just flirting very dangerously with the grass. And to answer Luke Rosella's question in the live chat, no, I don't believe that the Volvos have been supplied with the incorrect tyre in this occasion. You can go and thank Brock Harvey for that little mix-up. There was an issue at the ATCC round put on by Brock Harvey's TCAC group. The Volvos had the wrong tyres. So, of course, they were a little bit slower across the circuit compared to the Commodore counterparts. I believe there was another handful of cars in there. I think the Nissan was another one that had the wrong tyre compound brought by the tyre supplier and required a little bit of extra work. It's just the 7 drivers that are out there at the moment. Only one yet to set a time. That is, of course, Brian Munn. I did notice there were 1 or 2 other drivers trying to get in for qualifying. Doesn't look like they've made it. They were in Discord. They've now vanished. So the smaller than usual numbers, about the same actually as what it was last week, but it has been getting a little bit smaller as the rounds have gone on. Liccardo's best at the moment at 57.475, which is not too far behind Nathan Higginson at the moment. Higginson's best a 57.428, and what's he doing at the moment? Looks like he's about to exit pit lane, I believe. Actually, he has exited pit lane. He's on the move now. So the man that's 92 points adrift. Of course, there's 90 points maximum available in a night for a pair of race wins. 40 in race 1, 50 in race 2. And that would come in mightily handily, but not if his teammates got anything to say about it, with Dane Liccardo dipping into the 56s. 56.9. Still a mile away from the time set by Termo. At 55.6 is 1.2 seconds of margin. And now Higginson's on an outlap, but he's pushing extremely hard. And still a long, long way to go in this session. The same thing we've had qualifying the last 2 rounds. Been the same thing we've had with the racing as well. Both about the same time duration. 20-minute qualifying, as has always been the case since day dot. And Higginson is deep and makes the fence. And he made the grass, so he made the fence. So I think that was pretty much inevitable. Pushing way too hard, understeered right out through the bend at the beginning of the lap. Brian Walsh much more composed and in control through that part of the circuit. Aboard the XD. Pretty respectable lap from Brian Walsh. It's 59.626. He actually had done a 58.6 in the earlier practice session, but I believe the track grip may be slightly down by virtue of the server reset. But if he can muster a 58.6, he will actually match Glenn Miles' time at the moment, because that's the next time up the road, 58.652. Wouldn't that be something? Good mates on the same row of the grid would be fantastic to see, with about the same sort of a lap time once he got installed this time. Car 27. That time around did a 59.5, so a little bit of a extra mojo out of the second last corner. I think just cost him a little bit. Let's go on. So take some onboard shots here, I think, with Brian Walsh. He works his way through the back section of the circuit. Very important circuit for flow and momentum and rhythm. I think are probably the 3 terminologies I would call this circuit. So let's see if Brian Walsh can take us on a flying lap here through the final corner and onto the front straightaway. And away we go. So over the line, through BP Bend, which is turn 1, and onto the carousel at turn 2. Big, long, undulating 180-degree right-hander. And then constantly going uphill. Now up through the left, staying to the left, trying to pick your spot for this long sweeping turn to the right, under the Dunlop Bridge, down to turn 6, which is called Hungry Corner for some reason. I've got no idea why. Up to the Eastern Loop, again, another big, long, 180-degree undulating corner. Plunge back down the hill. There's your pit lane entrance off to the right, where the Witches' Hats are. Through Ford Corner, final corner. Carry the speed, leaving plenty of margin for error on the outside, and goes across the line in a 59.1. So pretty much spot on his existing lap time as it stands right now. Not a lot of movement in the times. A few drivers bettering their PBs. Glenn Miles is still on a 58.6. Higginson has jumped up to P2 by timing screens here with a 56.866, but But Dane Liccardo, I believe, must have some sort of a little drama. And actually he's just jumped back in there now. So you can see he's ahead, actually he's now behind Nathan Higginson at a 56.9. So all important front row for Higginson. Even if he's not able to challenge the Termo time between now and the end of the session, even if we were to pencil him in for a pair of second place finishes, it's still 86 points. It's 4 points off the maximum, and it would still mean he'd be only 6 points behind Shannon Wright going into the Winton round. Another round that we probably expect the Volvo to be quite strong, and the information that I'm being handed, or have been handed, is that it looks like we're going to be using the old club layout before they did the extension and took turn 10 in a left-hand fashion and extended it on to 11 and 12, and then the new pit complex. It's going to be the old layout. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but that's the information I have on hand. And Higginson's all sorts of sideways at the moment, and sideways means fence in this particular incident, and that's the end of that. Let's see Liccardo going out again now. There he is on the far side of the circuit, being pursued by Brian Walsh, and the man bringing up the rear end of the field at the moment, as is I wouldn't say customary, but seems to be more often than not, is John Wright, and he's the only man yet to crack the 60-second lap time at the moment. A 101.273 is his best, and this is a flying lap for him from what I am led to believe, judging by the timing. And through the final corner, is there an improvement on the lap time here? It doesn't look like there's going to be. And no, there's not. So it's a 101.889, the last lap for John Wright. Still Termo the fastest time, 55.694, and he set that some laps ago now. Very, very early in the session that time came up, and no one's been able to even get close. Everybody, or the best person you can see there on the screen, Higginson, 1.1 seconds in arrears. So Commodore doesn't have the grip that it needs around places like this, and you can see Termo is just quite happy to put his feet up, and I'd imagine have a drink and a sandwich or something. Doesn't look like there's very much going on down there at the moment. He just seems quite content just to be doing what he's doing at the moment. And there's been a few incidents, I think. Yep, Higginson had an incident, and Walsh has as well. So looks like there's a bit of, I don't know, steam or water. Maybe Walsh fried an engine there. Nope, can hear the car going. So no, that's him. I won't say back to the pits, but that's him jumping out of the game, I think, there. So maybe an incident of some nature or a technical gremlin. I've noticed as well Brian Munn trying to get in and get going a few times. We know Brian's had a few problems with the number 05 VL Commodore. I think a number of them have been game or technical related. He's not been able to get out and complete a full lap just yet. Surprised to see, even though with Shannon Wright not here tonight, that the other Gold Coast Lawn Bowls cars not out and about. Terry Marwood we haven't seen for a couple of weeks. Jamie Nankervis had a good, strong result at Sandown last week, ending up with a pair of podiums, a second and a third, but he was so stoked with his performance he didn't want to hang around for the interviews. He went off and probably got sloshed, I'd imagine. Much the same way that Dane Liccardo's going off and, I wouldn't say getting sloshed, but not hitting the fence. And Brett Willis was in action 2 weeks or 2 rounds ago at Calder Park. He missed Sandown. He's sort of been a bit sporadic throughout the season. I do recall that he did have a little stint in hospital earlier on in the season, sort of through the latter stages of last year. And then, of course, there was Shannon Wright, who swapped to the Volvo after about round 1 or 2 and has had that car ever since. And it seems to have been the weapon of choice for just about every driver that stepped into the car. It is an extremely competitive little package. And we've got the over-shoulder cam for Glenn Miles here into turn 1. Oh, well weighted it wide of the apex and fence. I think we're going to be calling that a fair bit tonight. The old fences around Lakeside Raceway, I think, are going to get one hell of a workout. So the session continues to drag on. Maybe it might have been better for them to cut the qualifying session down to 10 minutes. Plenty of drivers have cut enough laps to warrant doing at least 2/3 the race distances coming up. 2 18-lap races, and the most laps that anybody has done so far is Brian Walsh and John Wright, both with 12. And Walsh sat up in the pits. John Wright's still going. The next bests are Higginson and Liccardo, who have both done 11. And Glenn Miles has done 9. And Pole Sitter at the moment has done 5. And is probably got no desire at the moment to do any more laps. Might see if he's actually decided to get on the move. Is he? Nope. He's just sitting there next to Brian Walsh. And if we have a look, let's go on board. And I was expecting to see maybe a newspaper and a cup of coffee or something in there, but nope. He's sitting there like the Stig at the moment, just pure concentration, just waiting and just thinking about what he's going to do next. Maybe looking in the rearview mirror going, oh, there goes somebody behind me. Wonder who that was. And if we decide to go and have a look at that, it's probably Dane Liccardo. There it is. So that's who went behind him in the rearview mirror. Dano going to get one more, well, probably 2 more laps here actually. Gets the line in time and it's clean. And where is his teammate at the moment? So the HMR VL Commodore is the only 2 cars on track at the moment. Dano gets 1 more lap, or 2 more laps, and Higginson will get 1 more as well. I think everybody else has just given up the game here. John Wright's got into the 60-second bracket. He hasn't been able to crack the 60 seconds now. He has lowered his time. He's down to a 1 minute .674. I think even he's sort of given up and decided even 12 laps is, probably 6 laps too many in qualifying here. And Higginson's not going to get another lap in the books. That is a balls up. Higginson's teammate, though, in Dane Liccardo, might get, or he'll get 1 more, whether or not he elects to. Oh, he just got across the line before the checkered flag. That is cutting it fine. His last lap to 57 flat, and nope, decides he can't be bothered doing any more laps. And with Higginson just doing much the same, I think they've sort of given up the ghost there, I think. That is qualifying over and done with. So Termo didn't have to work overly hard for his pole position there. Set the lap early, put his feet up, and decided it was time to call the session very, very early at about the 6 minutes gone mark. Then it's Higginson and Liccardo, Glenn Miles and Brian Walsh, John Wright in 6th, and hoping that Brian Munn will be able to get himself going and jump into the session for the racing tonight. Just going to go back to the race information screen. So we had a couple of things I guess we were covering through that one there. So we mentioned it during the qualifying session just gone that flow and rhythm very, very important at this circuit. You can see there's virtually no proper hairpin corners or super duper hard stops. The hardest stops on the track pretty much is the opening prop right hand corner, so through the bend in the front straight at turn 1, and then turn 2, the carousel that loops back on itself. The hardest stop is just in the braking zone prior to that turn, and then up and over the top. You're sort of balancing the throttle, carrying the momentum. You sort of apply the anchors pretty firmly to get into turn 6 before you head up to the sector 2 marker. But you're not on the anchors very hard for turn 7 and neither for turn 8. So keeping up that mid-corner speed, keeping up your driving line, making sure you hit all your marks, use all the road available, going to be very, very key to making good lap time here. And the man who did that best in qualifying, of course, was Termo. But he is, of course, in the car that we expected to go pretty well around this circuit, very much suited to the change of direction, whereas the VL definitely going to be relying a lot more on the momentum. Good in a straight line, but that will only get you so far at a circuit like this. Got to be completely dialed in, soften it all off, get the turn in precisely right, and get going quite quickly out of the corners. So getting on the throttle nice and early, that's what they were practicing. But in a lot of cases, the VLs were jumping sideways. Just counting down with about 2 minutes or so to go. What we'll do is we'll take a short break and we will come back with the start of race 1 in a few moments. Welcome back, everybody. 20 seconds remains on the wait time before drivers are allowed to join the circuit and get themselves ready on the grid to start race number 1 this evening. First of 2 18-lap races. And we'll be taking you there in just a few moments' time. Keeping an eye on things just to see how our drivers are faring with getting themselves into the server in time. And looks like Brian Munn for the moment has been able to get himself into the server. We just don't know if it's going to be for a little while or for a long while. And we're just waiting for the remainder of the cars just to line up on the grid, and then we'll be right to get going. Now taking the live pictures. You can see here, watching the safety car at the very back of the grid. And if we go on board, not that one. We're just waiting on a few things there. There's the onboard view from the safety car. You can see all the cars ahead. I mean, we're not going anywhere, but the cars ahead most certainly are. And let's see how we go. So you can see Termo, pole position on the left, Higginson in second place on the right. Horns honking, lights all flashing, they're all waiting, they're ready to get going, and so are we. And here we go. Countdown with the lights. It's slow with the lights. Start sequence. And let's go racing at Lakeside. Off we go. Good clean start for everybody except for Brian Munn, who made the fence off the start line. Higginson got the better launch, and Liccardo went through as well. Termo, not a good start. Down to position number 3. Looks like there might have been a little bit of a dive there. Oh, say Miles and Walsh going at it like two monkeys in a phone box at the moment. And off they go. It looks like Brian Munn is unfortunately gone from this race at the very beginning. So not the best of luck for Brian Munn. He's had terrible luck with his Assetto Corsa install over the last couple of weeks. Trouble at Calder Park, trouble at Sandown, now trouble at Lakeside. So that's one of the VL Commodores gone. But 2 more still remain, and Higginson is making a break for it, or is at least attempting to make a break for it as they get to the line for the opening lap. Standing laps look pretty good. Termo is all over the back of Dane Liccardo though, and looking for a way through. Oh, big fistful opposite lock there in the first part of the carousel. The car just got away from him a little bit, and now heading up the hill. So they've cleared away from Brian Walsh. Glenn Miles has now fallen behind John Wright, but these two VLs are trying to nick off, and Termo is clinging on. It definitely has the pace advantage, and there's a little bit of a look to the inside here at turn 7, but nothing open. But Liccardo also awake to the task in holding off Termo quite handily here, and Termo not able to get to the gas quickly enough out of the final corner. You could hear him just hesitate on the throttle to pick it up, and he was a lot closer than this going into turn 2 last time. Oh, big lock up from Liccardo. He's made a mistake. Liccardo's made a mistake, and I think maybe nearly got into the back of Higginson there, and all that hard work that he'd done to defend from Termo has just vanished in a heartbeat. Top 3 covered by less than a second. Fastest man that time around was Liccardo, 57 flat compared to Higginson's 57.2 and Termo's 57.4. Not a lot in it at the moment. And then Brian Walsh has got a lot of clear air either side of him, running in P4, with Wright and Miles the next closest battle on the track. And Miles is through, so we just didn't see it off camera, but there you are. Glenn Miles is through, and they're off the circuit. So the pair of them off the circuit here at turn 7. So I think Miles had just got the pass done. Maybe there was a little bit of contact there. And now off they go again. Meanwhile, out in front, Higginson has got that little bit of a break that he needs. Just a little bit of breathing room, but with no compulsory stop that has to play out tonight, they've got a fair bit of work to do. They've got to think about the tyre preservation. They've got to use probably the harder compound. And they've got to think about preserving. They've got to think the long game here. They've got to think how they're going to get home for 18 laps. There's a lot of left-hand bends here. Brian Munn's got going again. So there he is on the exit of the pit lane. And Higginson now into a 56.6. And he's going to be the pioneer here as to how they get past Brian Munn. And Brian staying well wide here, but still a bit too quick for Higgo. Where's the move going to come? Is it going to come down the hill into turn 6? Oh, Brian's out of control. Brian Munn out of control. And up and over and out. So that was... Oh, and worse was to follow. I think Higginson probably was a bit distracted. This could be a disaster! Oh, so close. He was so close to wiping out his own teammate. Lewis Wedding in the chat, hashtag have a dip. And Higginson having a big dip, trying to put more margin on Liccardo, but got it all wrong and then nearly wiped his teammate out on the rejoin. That was almightily close. So now Termo's got a new target to chase. It happens to be the man in second place in the championship. And Brian Munn still out of this race, and I can't say I'd blame him if he decided to pull a pin at this point. He's had nothing but torrid luck. Oh no, and then both the HMR Commodores are in trouble. Higginson's done the same thing he did last time out, and Dane Liccardo did the same sort of thing that Higginson did on the previous lap. Termo now says, thank you very much, I'll have second place. That's all the invitation that I needed. And what do they do now? Oh, that's... I was about to say, did Termo think about going to the pits and make a bit of a mistake there? What happened? But he's now dropped to 4th. So I don't know if that was a moment on the exit of the corner, but certainly unintentional. And off he goes. I'm wondering if Termo's got a problem here. He's touring the outside of the grass, still 4th, but comfortable hold moment over Glenn Miles, but he wouldn't want to be doing that too many times. What that does mean, Liccardo leads Higginson by 4 seconds, and Higginson still having issues at turn 6. 3 laps running, he has found the grass, and Brian Walsh is within striking distance if there's another one on this lap. So Walsh, he drove pretty well at Sandown last time out. Picked up a podium and a 4th place. I'm very, very happy with his night's work. And he's got the bit between the teeth at the moment. He's actually looking pretty comfortable in 3rd place. So it's 7 seconds on Termo. And these laps are going really, really quick. Already 7.5 minutes into this race, and we're currently working lap 8. Walshy's made the grass and he's made the fence as well. We did say the fences were probably going to get a fair working out tonight. And indeed they are. And the grass is also getting a fair mowing in a lot of cases tonight as well, as Walshy has a moment on the outside of 7 and lights it up. Termo's going to arrive on the scene at a rapid rate of knots and think about the inside, and there he goes. So stuck to his guns, had a dip as Lewis Wedding would say, and dipped himself back onto the podium. Now I don't know if the HMR Commodore teammates of Higginson and Liccardo are going to play a team game here or not, but I think Dane definitely wants that win. He's had a bit of a tough time in the series. He's got 1 win on the board, which was the first race at the Gold Coast all the way back at round 4. He actually had a double podium that round, and it was a good run for him actually. That was the first That win for him was the first of 5 straight podiums, and actually 6 podiums in 7 races. He's got 8 podiums on the season, including that 1 race win. But he definitely wants to add another one to the points tallies before the end of the year. He's racked up, unfortunately, 65 penalty points for a number of indiscretions this year. If I can go back and have a bit of a look through some of the incidents that have happened. The last one that came up was all the way, actually it was 2 rounds ago, it was at Calder Park, and that was the moment that we saw him on the grass on the second race start. Ended up getting into one of the Volvos, causing a chain reaction, and he ended up with a penalty for that one. And if I'm having a look here, he actually got, there was 40 seconds added to his race time over that for the failure to readdress. And we're going all the way back to last year here. There was stuff added that was at Bathurst as well. So there was a few penalties that he's had. Other drivers to receive some penalty points this year. Brian Walsh got 20 points last time out for an unsafe rejoin, which I think we actually picked up on the broadcast at Sandown. That was in race 2. And the other person to pick up 20 points for penalty was actually Ozrob. And I'm trying to remember when that last one was. It might have been either Bahrain or Singapore. One of those 2 races is where he picked up his 20-point penalty. And they're the only drivers that have had penalties all season. We had a look at the leaders board a little bit earlier. We were trying to work out where a few extra points had came from. We'd gone off all the penalty point situations and worked out where everybody should have, or what the points that everybody should have, and then a couple of drivers had more points than others. But we've been through all the records, we've checked all the race wins and cross-referenced them against all of the standings results, and we believe we have got the correct points in the fact that Shannon Wright does not have 906 by my record. He has 901. And speaking of getting more points, looks like Termo is about to gain a few more, and that's a very, very nice pass from Termo around the outside of Eastern Loop. And some 13.5 seconds in arrears of Dane Liccardo here. But for Higginson, needs to think about the long game here. And I mean, the long game also means not only points at the end of this race, but it also means points for the reverse grid and how he tackles the reverse grid race. Staying with Termo for the moment. And he's had a moment here. He's had problems at turn 6 all night, but that's before turn 6. That's not on the exit. And is he going to drop any positions to Brian Walsh here? Where is Walsh? There he is, just coming into shot. So Walsh not close enough to capitalise. I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of this from Higginson at the moment. He probably knew coming into tonight with Shannon being away that the margin was going to be eroded. It was just going to be a case of by how much. And so he's gone from earning what would have been 40 points for a race win to 38 points for second, and now down to 35 points for third, and it's now about to be 30 points for fourth. So he's lost fourth place now. Sorry, down to fourth place. He's lost third to Walsh. He'll be lucky between now and the end of the race to hang on to fifth. Sorry, not to hang on to fifth, to hang on to fourth rather, because Glenn Miles, despite having one of his usual races, is now right in the thick of it with the man in second place in the championship here. Every point crucial for Higginson, and again off the road at turn 6. He is having a nightmare. at that part of the circuit. Kept saying flow is important, rhythm is important, finding your line is important. And on at least a half a dozen occasions that from what we've seen, he has had all sorts of problems with that part of the course. We're up against the fence, and Lewis Wedding saying here in the chat, the amount of points that he is dropping at the moment could very well be the championship slipping away, and he will make a net gain tonight on Shannon Wright regardless of what happens. Just a case of how much he's gone from leading this race, which is worth 40 points for the win, to 5th place, which is worth 28. So it's 12 points a swing. So if he was looking for a perfect night, would have given him 90 points, and he would have only been 2 in arrears. Even with 2 second places, he would have been 6 points in arrears. Best case scenario as it stands right now, he's 14 points behind, and that's if he can muster a race win in the next race. So very, very poor race 1 here for Nathan Higginson. For his teammate though, all plain sailing at the front. All the memes popping up in the chat here about the corks on the champagne bowl's been popping, and taking the chicken out of the oven because it's cooked. I think the next one I'm expecting to see is stick a fork in that turkey because it's done. But that's about all you can get when you're talking about food and alcohol at the moment, when you're referring it to the motor racing we're seeing at the moment. Apart from a couple of offs, or very minor offs compared to his teammate, and very lucky not to have been wiped out by his teammate, Liccardo continues on. Now Higginson's just repassed Miles, and that's down at turn 6. So for once I think he's actually got that part of the circuit right. Or has he? No, Glenn Miles may be going off at that part of the circuit. Maybe that's what's handed it back. And John Wright, who's gone a lap down, is not in a position here to grab 6th place from Glenn Miles. But Dane Liccardo is the race leader, and he's just behind them. He's about to start the final lap. Now, he doesn't need to do anything silly here. He's got a huge margin. Might just be best just to cruise home and just let the guys ahead fight it out for, well, bragging rights, I'd say, finishing ahead on the track of one another, although Miles is full lap ahead. But he doesn't need to put these guys a lap down. He doesn't need to do anything sus. He just needs to bring the car home. And well, John Wright does the right thing and gives him some extra room. And now Higginson has been repassed by Miles. Just looking at the other thing, Miles has gone off and into the fence. And where's Higginson? Higginson's gone a lap down. Did he come into the pits? He must have been in the pits. And Glenn Miles is going to try and rejoin the circuit. I'll have to keep an eye on that, because that's crucial for point standings, whether Higginson gets 4th or 5th on the road. What's definitely certain is the race win. Dane Liccardo with another win on the season, his 2nd. And there's a fence. Termo's going to get home for 2nd. Brian Walsh will come in for 3rd. Glenn Miles, most importantly, is going to hold off Nathan Higginson for 4th place here. So Miles the first, the car's a lap down. Higginson home in 5th. John Wright 2 laps down 6th. Brian Walsh will finish on the lead lap in 3rd place. So another podium for Brian Walsh. Right place at the right times. Picks up another good fistful of points. But the story of things at the moment, as Termo shows that the gravel trap is really not made of gravel, because that would leave a nice big bit of circle work on the track there. Now I can hear a few other drivers bagging it up. Just looking to see where they all are, but it looks like everybody's going back to the pit lane here. So what we'll do in this particular instance, we'll go back and take a short little break ourselves, I guess, and let's digest what just happened in that race. So Liccardo with the win, Termo with second, and Brian Walsh with third. So that's the podium. Glenn Miles with fourth place. He had a fourth place in race 1 at Sandown last week, so he did pretty well to pull up another one of those. So a couple of drivers having some nice little ends to the season. Nathan Higginson, the big one out of this is the 5th place for Higginson, so drops a huge chunk of potential points. And then John Wright, the 6th place finish. So only the 6 drivers. Brian Munn, the only other one who tried to get going in a few occasions and did not finish the race. Only did a few laps. So that's how it sits after race 1. And now we're getting a little bit of word here that Higginson had an issue with part of the track and fell through it. So that was the reason for him dropping through the field from was 4th to 5th. And that's an issue we've seen at a couple of tracks in certain spots. So I guess for Higginson that will mean he keeps himself on the blacktop for the next race. And speaking of the next race, it means we take a short break and we come back with race number 2 in a few moments' time. Welcome back, guys. Race 1 in the books for the night. Race 2 about 4 3/4 minutes away from starting. We're just getting some word through. There's a bit of sim rig drama, I guess we can call it. A few people having some issues with wheels and things like that. Hopefully they can get themselves back in. The one we're waiting on is actually Brian Munn. He's actually had problems for a few weeks now, so not sure if he's going to get those problems resolved in any great hurry. But we are hoping that he will have that fixed, and at least we can get 7 runners for the next race. Just having a bit of a look at the Lakeside Park circuit on the shores of Lake Kawangba, which is just 30 k's north of Brisbane. So it is pretty close to, as much as you can get, I guess, close to a lake, because that's precisely where it happens to be. And we mentioned earlier in the night that there was a number of things to do with lakes. A couple of different other lakesides that come to mind are the Lakeside train station, which is part of the Puffing Billy railway line here in Victoria. There was also a song with the name Lakeside that was done by Australian Crawl, which, believe it or not, if you're very familiar with the work of Australian Crawl, that song was all about going to the beach and perving on the girls. But I don't think you can do much perving at this particular lakeside. The only thing you'd be looking at would be all the cars going round and round. Lakeside, actually, believe it or not, does have surprisingly a noise limit, like a lot of circuits. It has been a bone of contention for the governments in Queensland for a long time, and the noise limit is 95 decibels to proceed onto the racing circuit, and that's at 8 metres from the exhaust exit point on the vehicle. They hold the microphone next door to it, and if you're less than 95 dB, you can go off into the blacktop and do your thing, and then while on the circuit, the noise limits are checked and enforced, and it's 95 decibels at the track's edge. So a few other circuits do have noise restrictions as well. Sandown is another, and a lot of the state rounds you'll see people sitting out in the blazing hot sun at a table with a dB meter and getting all the readings. And a number of circuits, while they don't necessarily have noise restrictions, they do have times that you cannot start your engine until. So example, Winton and Phillip Island both have I think it's a 9 o'clock AM start time, or engine start time rather, so you can't start your engine before that time. And we look down the order here, and the only thing we can see is that the noise restrictions is the only thing on Lakeside. There's no engine start time, but I'd imagine they'd have something pretty sensible given it's in a part of a metro area. So your order for race number 2's starting grid, which is about a minute away from forming up, is going to be headed by John Wright and Nathan Higginson. So Higginson gets a second front row start for the night, having started off the front row in race 1 by virtual qualifying second. This time qualified finished fifth. Therefore he starts second in the reverse grid. John Wright has the pole. Then behind them it's going to be Glenn Miles and Brian Walsh, and then Termo and Dane Liccardo. And if Brian Munn is able to get himself ready to go, then he will sadly be at the back because he didn't do enough laps to qualify for reverse grid front row. The margin, while we have a look at the championship picture, is now down to 64 points for Nathan Higginson. So a win in this race coming up would get that margin down to 14, and that's the most amount of points that he'll be able to be mustering tonight. And with 2 tracks to go, that probably will favour the Volvo will definitely be favoured at Winton, I'd imagine. And then Newcastle, I'd say, is probably a flip of the coin. It still might be advantage to Shannon Wright. He's going to probably walk away here with not being here tonight, but with a handy points advantage. It'll be much, much reduced, but it will still be an advantage. Fastest lap of qualifying was Termo's 55.6, and in the last race it was a 56 from Dane Liccardo, I believe it was. It was a 56.6. Got some live pictures, just getting ourselves ready to go here. The cars are gridding up out there on the circuit, and as we predicted, there is the grid offset. And the difficult part here, you can see just by the way that Assetto Corsa sorts itself out. Brian Munn has made the grid, but he's unfortunately behind the safety car, which shouldn't be happening, but by virtue of how AC does things, that's what it does. And again, if we have a look at that, there we go. Our view from the driver's perspective of the Vodafone Mustang safety car. But that's not the part that we are interested in. What we are interested in is the race start. How do we go here? All lights on. Who gets the launch? Higginson got the launch. Big time got the launch. Fantastic launch from Higginson. John Wright went absolutely nowhere and has been swamped as well. So both the VL Commodores of Higginson and Dane Liccardo go through to first and second, much the same way that they were when they started the first race and got ahead of Termo. But the most important bit for Liccardo was that his start was from the rear of the grid. So the VL's doing their best to disprint distance. Another VL's gone through and hit the fence, and now is doing some lawn mowing in the same fashion that the HMR Commodores were doing in the first race. But at least it looks like the wheel for the moment for Brian Munn is holding up. Termo has jumped ahead of John Wright, but Termo is... what's going on here? Has he got some damage that maybe needs repairing here? He's coming into the pit lane. So in goes Termo. Let's see if we can see what he's up to here. He doesn't have to make... It's not a compulsory stop race. No, he's got a drive-through. So a drive-through penalty for Termo. So that will be a jump start. That's the only penalty you can get for a jump start. And that drops him to the back of the field. So HMR Commodores 1 and 2. Glenn Miles position number 3 and Brian Walsh P4. So music to the ears of Higginson and Liccardo. And keep an eye out for these two. Or these next pair, I should say. And Brian Walsh now coming into the pit lane. So he got to drive through as well. There he is in the back of shot. We'll just stay here. There through the pit lane. And... Yep, taking the long lap penalty, I guess is what you call it in MotoGP now. And comes back out onto the circuit. And he's had a drive through as well. He's going to get rounded up by John Wright. And may or may not stay ahead of Brian Munn here. 3 wide very briefly on the run to turn 1. And, John Wright backed out of it. Walsh went through. Brian Munn went sailing off and almost made the fence at turn 2. So Brian Walsh came into the pits in 4th place, exited in 5th, and is now back to 4th in a matter of corners. And now is involved in this nice little battle between himself and Termo. It'll be a matter of time before Termo gets through. And speaking of Termo going through, there he goes. Up the inside at turn 7. Walshy does a tour of duty through the lawns. And that, I think, means John Wright will go through. And Brian Munn will probably have a little bit of might line him up here as well. Walshy parks it on the apex at turn 8. And now Brian Munn in the VL Commodore probably out-drag the XD down to turn 1. Oh, and it's... Whoa! And John Wright's hit the fence, and that contact was started by Brian Munn, from what I could see. Had a go at the inside at 1, got into Walsh, everything got closed up. Walsh basically got wedged between Wright and Munn, and then it was Wright who made the fence. So I imagine they'll probably be looked at after this one is over. Meanwhile, the HMR Commodores at the front of the field trade fastest laps on that one. Higginson crossed the line in a 56.677. And a split second later, Liccardo lowered the mark by a 10th. at a 56.5. And now Turmo shows his pace all the way down in 4th place with a 55.9. So just says, thank you very much. I'm going to snatch the fastest lap away from you, and I dare you to have a dip and try and beat me. So important race for these two. More so for Higginson. Needs as many points as he can get. For Dane Liccardo, the important bit for him is getting another fistful of points on the board. And if he can manage that, he will jump back up the order ahead of John Wright, but may go close to jumping ahead of Jamie Nankervis as well. Actually, no, just doing the math here, he'll be 2 points short of Jamie. The big question is he's now 20 points behind John Wright, and with only a small number of drivers here, the points gaps will be, I guess, a bit of a drama to work through. He'll actually be behind John Wright no matter what happens tonight, but he'll just close that margin down, and that's all in his pursuit of 3rd place overall in the championship. Dane has missed a couple of rounds. Didn't see him in Adelaide or Symmons Plains. He actually took his first race start in round 3 at Barbagallo. And then the other rounds, of course, he's missed. He missed the Bahrain round. That was by virtue of the wheel that he's had problems with. And Higginson spins out of the lead, coming up the hill out of turn 3 and 4. And more points go begging. From the highs of last week to the trials and tribulations this week, it's been a very difficult round for Higginson. Can still salvage some pride here with a podium finish. He just needs to keep pressing on. Go back to Liccardo at the front. We were saying he missed the opening 2 rounds. He missed the Bahrain round after having his Simrig's wheel break on him. And then thankfully over the Christmas and New Year break there wasn't any racing. Came back for Calder Park. Missed the Sandown round and back for Lakeside. Whereas Higginson and John Wright, the only 2 drivers that have run every race all season long, as Liccardo decides to show us what Higginson did in race 1, but just with a little bit more, I wouldn't say pizzazz, but a little bit more energy and enthusiasm, because he managed to maintain the lead, unlike Higginson, who dropped quite a lot of points and dropped a lot of positional standings on his attempts at turn 6. A minute flat from Liccardo that time around. Higginson 56.9, so that's what touring the grass does to you. It does take a lot of your time away. PB for Glenn Miles that time around 58.217, and Brian Munn's last lap 59.466. That was his best as well. Although he's a little bit further up the road, he's still looking to see what his time is going to be this time around. Glenn Miles very relaxed and composed at the moment this time around. Comfortable in 3rd. He's got nice margin, 5 seconds over Terma at the moment. There is the red flying brick in the back of shot. And Miles is playing himself into a nice little spot here. If there's any more mistakes from Higginson, he will be very firmly entrenched in the podium, as we've now ticked over half race distance. So half the race gone, still half the race to go, and the timer says we have just ticked over 9 minutes and 5 seconds, so you can work that out. These laps, or these 18 lap races, are pretty much going to be over in about 18 minutes. there or thereabouts. Now, there's been an exchange here. John Wright off the circuit at 6. So, next victim at turn 6. He has become a crop up. So I just saw that flashing up because he did give position to Brian Walsh, who very nearly could have ended Nathan Higginson's race right there with that rejoin. That was almightily close. The battle we're really going to start to get interested in a minute is how quickly Termo can dispatch of Glenn Miles. You can see just here, he's just caught behind Brian Walsh at the moment. Heading up the back section of the course, this free-flowing section. Walsh is on the grass. And, oi! Great situational awareness from Termo there. Picked the side, kept the car stable through that part of the course, and actually made a really good gain on Miles that time around. Look at Termo, gets it hooked into the corner so nicely, gets really good drive off. This will be an easy pass by the looks of things going up into turn 1. Here they come, and he's got the move done well and truly before turn 1. Miles wide of the apex, the final corner. Termo hooked the corner nicely, got on the power nice and quickly, and just accelerated through. There you can see the motorcycle course just off to the right there, which is the little extension that was done in the early 70s. And that was apart from that, the only other section was elevating the extra 100 metres of racetrack because of the floodplain at the back part of the circuit. That was the only extra addition they'd done, and that was the last time this circuit really properly changed at all. There goes Higginson. Termo in third place, there he goes. The next question for Termo fans is, can he reel in Higginson in the next 6 laps and grab second place? Wouldn't put it past him. Last lap times around, Higginson 57.3, Termo 56 flat. At the moment, just 4 cars on the lead lap. They'll be comfortable on the lead lap at the moment. Brian Munn a lap down. Brian Walsh, John Wright, the other 2. There is Brian Munn. Just going a lap down to Higginson and Termo. Carter 57.9, Higginson 58 flat. Termo 55.9. So Termo on a charge here. Probably won't get all the way to the back of Dane Liccardo before the race is over, but Nathan Higginson certainly is within reach. And here goes, just going to have to taper his expectations a bit. Doesn't want to go sliding through corners like he did there with turn 4. And he certainly can't afford any offs here at turn 6. Termo will be all over him like a cheap suit in a matter of minutes. And I don't think it's a matter of minutes anymore. I think Higginson's advantage might be... Oh, Termo's had a big moment. Big 2-wheel moment through the final corner. Lost a little bit of ground, but not too much. But he did make a net gain overall on that lap. I think Higginson's time in second place could be getting measured in seconds, not minutes or laps here. Probably going to be a very easy pass, I'd imagine, for Termo at some point. He's just got to pick his moment and make it stick. Higginson a bit sideways. Turmo a bit sideways as well. Higginson more sideways. More wiggling than a red food concert at the moment. And the red monster in his rearview mirror. And we're riding on board now. All over him here. Didn't hook the corner quite well there, but he did get good drive off. And Commodore just starting to accelerate away just a little. It'll be on the brakes a little bit earlier. And big lock up. And is the door open? The door was open. Not for very long though. And Higginson defending for his life right now. He's already dropped the race lead. He cannot afford to drop second place. Drives it in deep. Both of them driving in pretty deep. Well off the entry apex of the corner. And this is a real humdinger of a battle now for the last two steps on the rostrum. Just 2 laps to go. Liccardo 6.2 seconds clear of these two. Higginson's now parking it in all the right spots. Heading off every possible opportunity. A little bit of a slide on the exit of 2. Turmo's right there. Not so out of control. Turmo compared to Higginson. Big slide again through 4. And now needs to hold Turmo high and wide here. Can't afford to run him out of room now. Turmo's gone a long way around, and that's a beautiful pass. Turmo with a fantastic pass around the outside of turn 6. Higginson out of control coming through 4. Took the defensive line. Made Turmo go the long way round. Left him enough room to do the job, and he got the job done. He needed to really shut that avenue off a lot earlier in Higginson, and he didn't get the chance to do it. Turmo was there in a flash, and that's probably the pass of the night at turn 6 for Turmo. And so he should continue on here to a second place. So that'll be a pair of second places on the season for him. Liccardo's driven a pretty faultless second race. I can't have seen him put a foot wrong at all in this one. Had a couple of issues in race 1. This time, race number 2. Much more smooth sailing for the pilot of car number 35. And, that was a bit adventurous. Just gave the fence a good old whack on the run to the line. And, what's happened here is Higginson's finished ahead of Turmo. So we didn't catch that. We're busy seeing Liccardo's antics coming into the final straightaway. But that is, that'll be something we're going to have a chat to those two about, I'd imagine, after the race. Another 4th place for Glenn Miles, so that's a good night's work for him. A nice haul of points, and he's the last man on the lead lap too. And John Wright has managed to round up Brian Walsh on the last lap. Is Brian Walsh out of fuel? Or has he had a slowdown penalty? Or has he got some sort of other issue? Let's have a listen. Might be stuck in gear, or might be some sort of failure going on here. The car it's crawling to the line actually. So Brian Munn's going to be classified in 7th place. Brian Walsh will be classed as 6th. And see Liccardo skating around the final corner. And John Wright's going to get home for 5th. Now, just wondering whether or not there's a little bit of a push going to happen here. Yep, they're going to give Walshy a push across the line. Good on Liccardo to get him home. There we go. All done. And now the fun begins. Off they go. So a pair of wins for Liccardo. Second place for Higginson. That would have been... he would have been hoping for a little bit more. But the margin now down to just 16 points. Could have been a lot more when we said at the start of the night. But the title fight well and truly alive with 2 more rounds to go. And now they're just having a bit of fun and games around here at the moment. I think there's just some synchronised spinning and now some synchronised rolling. I think that's where we'll probably leave that one for the night, I think. The fun and rolling games are over for another night. And as we said at the beginning of the night, there was only 3 more races left to go in the season. And if we have a look on the season calendar, they're the ones that we have remaining. So Winton next week, Newcastle the week after. There's not a lot left in this series. Now we'll just wait very briefly for a few moments to see if the top 3 can make their way into the broadcast box from each race. So we should have 4 drivers with us. And I think they're just having a little bit of fun and giggles up there at the moment. And probably won't be much longer before we see our dual race winner. 2nd time in as many weeks, actually 3rd time in as many weeks, we've had a dual race winner on the night. We had Luke Rosella win both races at Calder Park, Higginson winning both races at Sandown, and Liccardo winning both races tonight at Lakeside. So the Generals men have won all 6 of the last 6 races, and if you go back to Bahrain, 7 of the last 8. With only 4 more races and 2 rounds left to go, they have really started to put a good run of form together, I guess you can call it. And I'm just waiting to see if we can get a couple of guys down here. They're still taking their time. I don't know what's going on up there. We might just give them a few more moments. And I'll just quickly update everybody on the point standings as they stand in just a few moments. And now we're starting to get the usual gentlemen filtering themselves in. And the first man here, surprise, surprise, is our dual race winner for tonight in Dane Liccardo. Dane, 2 more wins for you on the season. Got to be happy with that.
Yeah, finally breaking the drought. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm not happy with the way I got it. Higo deserved those 2 wins. But I knew he needed to clean sweep the weekend, and I was going to help him any way possible. But unfortunately, he made the mistakes, and it's not the way I wanted to win.
Well, it's your first win, or first wins, I should say, rather than all the way back at the Gold Coast, which was only your 2nd round in the series. You had a 7th and a 6th at Barbagallo, and then a 1st and a 3rd at the Gold Coast. So you're right, it's been a little bit of a drought, and there's been a number of occasions this year where you've been on the podium, but you've been in contention for the win. From my perspective, race 2 looked pretty clean, didn't really put a foot wrong. Talk to us about race 1. There was a couple of moments where both yourself and Nathan did a bit of lawn mowing at turn 6. Looks like you guys had some issues pulling the car up. And then there was that really wild moment where you nearly got wiped out by your teammate across the grass at turn 7. Talk to us about those.
Well, turn 6 is just a case of let's see how late we can brake and see how hard we can send it. So, having a dip. Figured out very quickly you can't brake as late as the Volvos. And the turn 7 with Higo, I thought Higo was already on the track and I went for the corner. I didn't even know how close he was until I was told I was almost hit.
Yeah, from the broadcast perspective, it probably would have been a bee's dick, I think, in that one is the correct terminology. It was mightily close. He's basically skated across the grass and was very lucky not to knock your rear quarter panel off. So could have been a lot worse, but you walked away with a pair of wins, and good for your championship hunt as well. You're right in the thick of things as well for the back end of the season. Possibly in the running for third place overall when everything is settled down. So we'll look forward to seeing what you can do in a week's time, mate.
Thank you.
All right, let's tune over to another man who doesn't like to talk very much. He'll probably have very little to say on this one, is Termo, with a second and a third place tonight. Drove relatively well in race one, Termo. Race two probably didn't go, I guess, according to plan. The start probably didn't go according to plan. Looks like you got a drive-through penalty of some nature, did you?
Yeah, I accidentally moved it a little bit too much before the lights went out and I drove.
There you go. So that explains that one. And the one good thing, I think, about your second race there tonight, the way you drove through the field after that penalty was pretty good. The one move that I liked the most was the one at turn 6 on the second last lap. Higginson took the defensive line, took the line away from you essentially, but made you go the long way around, and you made it stick with a really ballsy pass around the outside at turn 6, and that was good from my perspective. How about from yours?
I realised I had extra grip on hand compared to Nathan and went around the outside.
Being very modest about it, but definitely looked the part from where we were sitting. But no, well done, mate. And another good haul of points for you. Vaults you up the order. And I know you've missed a few rounds this year, but 2 more rounds to go. And let's see what you can do next week at the Winton circuit.
Thank you.
All right, over to the man who had it all to do this round in Nathan Higginson. Mate, this is probably not the way you, I guess, were hoping things to pan out, but nonetheless for you, it's a margin that is now much, much reduced. It could have been a lot more, but it's still within grasp or within striking distance of Shannon Wright, I guess we can call it.
Yeah, I was hoping by the end of tonight it would have been a lot closer than it actually is. I was hoping to have gotten it down to I think it was around 7 points by getting a clean sweep, but I guess I saw red mist and just started chasing it way too hard.
Yeah, that's the kind of perspective I think we were getting from, especially from your race one. There was quite a lot of, I guess, it's a return to your flamboyant driving style, I think, is what we used to call it from the early part of the season, where you were sideways quite a lot. Where Sandown was quite, I guess, a bit more measured and controlled. This one, it's sort of the undulation of the circuit, I think, maybe got away from you a little bit tonight.
Yeah, and the fact that with regards to tyre wear, if you tried to drive with any sort of speed within a couple of corners, your tyres would already start to degrade into the yellow, and especially with I know there was an incident I had in, I think it was race one, coming into the first turn, especially the little hump before turn one. I think I might have just got a bit too close to the wall there and, lost it over that hump, because I think I'd just shifted into fifth and just got a little bit of wheel spin, and it got me sideways over that hump and just drifted it round turn one.
Yep, so you've had a bit of a difficult night, I guess, getting to grips with the circuit, but the important thing is I know that there's a bit of conjecture around what the points are supposed to be at the moment. I mean, on our math, it says it's 16 points. I mean, from your perspective, it's probably about another 5 or 6 points more than that from, I guess, the stuff that's been posted in the Discord. But we'll get to the bottom of all of that. We'll get a proper gap as to what it actually is. But that doesn't take anything away from the fact that next week, or for the next 2 rounds, it's basically game on.
Yeah, definitely. And hoping that the tracks that we're going to in the last 2 rounds, which I believe are Winton and Newcastle, I guess it's just a hope that those tracks suit the VL enough to pull out good qualifying, so it keeps me ahead of the field.
Yep, no, I tend to agree. I seem to think that probably Winton might favour the Volvo, and I think John, who's in the chat with us here, might confirm this for me. John, the layout of choice, I believe, is actually the old club layout from what you were alluding to a couple of weeks ago, and is that still the case?
Yep.
There we go.
Still the case.
There we go. So the old layout that we were mentioning before they added the extension in the recent past is probably going to be a lot shorter than a lot of people think. There's only one real proper long straight on that, and that's the drag out of what they call the section around the tree, basically down to the chicane that ends up back on the start-finish straight, the very short start-finish straight. So probably a track suited more to the Volvo than the VL. Newcastle might be a flip of the coin, but we'll see. That's next week that we've got to worry about. Congrats, Higo. You've got a good 76 points in the bank for tonight.
Awesome. Thank you.
And the last man who was a podium sitter tonight was Brian Walsh in race 1. Brian, not a bad run of form. Your run through the last 3 weeks reads like this. A pair of 6th places, a 3rd and a 4th, and a 3rd and 6th tonight was probably on for a little bit better than what it actually was, but still a good, nice little back end to your season. Oop, got a little bit of issues with Brian. Brian, just sort your mic out for us there, mate.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep, got you now.
First race was good. I'm going to bring back a campaign to try and get V8s back to Winton now. Lakeside now, but after Larko's come back. But yeah, I had a good race 1, just stay consistent, and like Higo said, he probably overdrove it a bit, and then I saw there was a place there to get, so I just kept it on the track, and yeah, it was pretty good, and I ended up with a 3rd and getting used to the car. And then I don't know if I can explain this on air, but the second race was a bit of a
Yes.
Well, I had the same problem as Termo. I jumped the start and I didn't realise. I thought I got away with it, and then I saw it up in the corner and it said 1 more lap to serve it, so I had to serve it. And then I just had, went off a few times and stuff like that. And my problem in the end actually wasn't fuel, as it was alluded to. It's the first time I'm actually using a H pattern shifter, and I've got to get used to using the clutch properly. And on the last lap, the transmission went.
Oy.
So I was very surprised. I actually got up because it went on the back straight. So I got up and over the hill in neutral, and then just came down the bottom and then got pushed over the line. I probably would have made it, but yeah, good luck to Dane and Higo and Termo tonight. They're better than me in the last race, and also Glenn actually lapped me in the last race, so he can put that in his notebook. So that's one I've got to get up on him. But yeah, apart from that, it was all right. I just got to remember, get used to this H pattern and go to Winton. And as for Winton, shorter the track, the better.
Yep, I think you and I probably both agree with that one. The shorter the track is going to be, the better. It's going to be a very busy circuit at Winton, and good to see you getting into the spirit of the ATCC with getting the H pattern out. None of this paddle shifting crap that they've all been blowing up about with Gen 3 for supercars. Good to see you going the historical route, Brian.
And good luck tonight. Thank John for running the series and you for calling it. 2 more rounds to go, and then we should get there.
Yep.
So thanks for that.
No worries. Thanks, guys. And you're right. 2 more rounds to go. And next week, we will see you all for Winton. Everybody, please drive safely. Please stay safe out of the heat that's happening over here in the southern part of the state and the country at the moment. It's going to be a bit of a warm few days. Look after yourselves and each other, as Jerry Springer would say. And we'll see you next week for Winton. Bye for now.